And we are live. So, welcome to episode 111. 111 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got Godzilla versus what have you.
Yeah, bring it on. Whatever you got.
Yeah, man. Nukes, it really doesn't fucking matter. Love triangles, it doesn't fucking matter. He's got you covered. So today, some anniversaries are due.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Well, you know about these. Today is the 45th anniversary of the release of
Star Wars.
Yeah. So
none of this episode 4 crap. It was Star Wars, period. End of sentence.
That's exactly right. And I mean, 45 years later, it's still going today. We are 2 days away from the release of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus, which for me is the last gasp for Star Wars, period.
It's the last old character they haven't killed yet, for God's sake.
Yeah, pretty much. Are you holding out hope, or is it are you cautiously optimistic, or are you just
I don't know, man. I saw the trailer and the extra clip they released today, and it looks okay, but proof's in the pudding. I'll watch the 2 episodes on Friday, and I'll probably watch the whole thing, and if it's bad, I will complain bitterly and wait for the next bullshit thing to come out and watch that and repeat the cycle. I keep waiting for it to be something really, really special that's worth Star Wars, and I hope that Obi-Wan is.
I hope it's worthwhile too. Hold on. Are you back?
There you go.
Uh-oh. Are you there? Okay.
You've been freezing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here. I wanted to do well also, but I'm not betting my grandmother on it, based on the last 3 years that what Disney has pumped out at us. So, we'll see how it plays out.
Well, they got like a 5-to-1 ratio or a 6-to-2 ratio of good to bad. With the only real good ones were The Mandalorian. I got nothing bad to say about that series. It was fantastic, and the Rogue One movie, which is up there in my top 5 Star Wars movies. But the rest,
at some point, you really should break down and catch those animated series. Yeah,
maybe I will if I have time. I sat and watched Solo again, and
how did it hold up,
dude? It's maligned unfairly. I mean, okay. I still say it's a solid B, but I think blaming that for the reason why they won't recast the characters with younger actors is a dumb move. It didn't fail because Roland Emmerich isn't good. It didn't fail because of the portrayal of Lando. It just simply failed because they tried to pump out 2 Star Wars movies in a year.
I mean, for me personally, I would like to see something other than a Skywalker, Solo, Leia saga. There's so much fresh, organic material. After 45 years, there's no way you can't come up with something different. But they're not.
Either that or go back to the source material. I would kill to see, Splinter of the Mind's Eye or Han Solo at Star's End. They would be fantastic. Yeah. Or the Thrawn series.
Yeah. But what was the battle that Lando mentions in Jedi, where they get the information that the Emperor has released about the new Death Star, and they talk about how many people died to get it. And it's sort of like a rogue
guys that died. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
can't remember the name of that one.
Yeah, but I mean, there's I'd see a movie about that. There are so many stories, that you could just flesh out into original fucking movies with completely unrelated characters that people will be like, okay, this isn't fucking retarded. I'll watch this. let's go. But here we are.
Yeah, but it's got to be Filoni and
Yeah,
Favreau. Otherwise,
Favreau.
it's just not going to work.
I was watching something today. I think I was watching Nerdrotic, and they were saying that Favreau, now that he has sort of shifted over from Marvel, where he a little bit, he got handed his hat, and pushed out, now has gotten back with, excuse me, Star Wars. But he very much is just kind of, walking on eggshells. And he's just, hey, I'm here and I'm going to make the best of a fucked up situation. And, he's not there to shake anything up anymore. He sort of has, thrown his hat up in the air and just kind of,
He proved his point. And if Kathleen Kennedy and the rest of them were smart, they would turn to him for another project. But they're not smart. They've shown that over and over.
No, they're not.
They're
ideologues.
Tired old franchise. Let's go to my favorite franchise.
Well, wait a minute. I got one more thing I want to say, but it's not about Star Wars. This is also the 40th or the 40th anniversary, 43 years today for Alien.
I didn't know that.
On this day in 1979, Ridley Scott's Alien was released and is one of my all-time favorite movies, period. And it's another movie that's kind of, with the franchises, just bottomed out, but that's the first one and the second one still hold up wonderfully. And I think I might actually catch it tonight once the stream is over.
Even the third one's worth watching every few years.
Yeah, Fincher's movie is good. All right, so that brings us to exactly what we're here to talk about today, which is fucking Godzilla.
Hell yeah.
Godzilla is now Criterion Collection level Blu-ray.
Yes.
It's considered one of the greatest monster movies of all time. And it is just fucking fantastic to watch. Can't get enough. It's that first fucking movie is just so fucking solid that, I mean, it's easily the best out of all of the Japanese-made movies, and maybe the best of them all. This is the biggest franchise in movie history. 36 movies.
Yes.
36 movies.
What franchises lasted longer,
The only thing that comes close is James Bond.
Yes.
The only thing that comes close is James Bond, but not nearly as many movies. And, of course, some were better than others. But this movie is just completely different than, what Godzilla has evolved into, sort of shifting from this fucking black, dark villain, who just wants to smash. It's like the Hulk times, 10,000. Like if you would make like an ultimate, World War Hulk kind of movie, shifting him suddenly to the anti-hero where you're pairing him up against Ghidorah, or these other sorts of movie monsters, all the way to now where he's just, the hero. And it's kind of a reluctant hero, but, he's the hero nevertheless. So if you're ready, we can get into it, shall we?
Hit it, maestro.
Boogie woogie. So this movie was nominated for 2 Japanese Movie Association Awards, one for Best Special Effects. I guess that's the Japanese equivalent of the Oscar. And one was for special effects and one was for Best Film for that year. It won for special effects. It lost for Best Film, but the movie that won that year for Best Film was Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Yeah, so if you're going to lose, there's complete honor in fucking losing to Seven Samurai. I mean, that's just one of the greatest movies of all time. It's an interesting movie with a lot of different layers to it. There's we're coming 9 years off the end of World War II,
Yep.
but still fresh, clearly in the Japanese mind.
Sure.
And still very fresh in the rest of the world's mind.
Yes.
And we can get into that down the road in the way that they sort of released an American version, which was heavily edited.
Yes.
And a lot of the other themes that are present in the movie that we're talking about tonight were not present in the U.S. release, because I don't think, in 54 or 55, there was necessarily a lot of sympathy or empathy for the plight of Japanese necessarily post World War II.
Maybe.
I don't think a sob story would have. I think a lot of Americans would have interpreted it sort of as a sob story.
Yeah, there was some raw feelings, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Grandpa or Uncle Jack never made it home from the Pacific.
Yeah. The Iwo vets probably wouldn't have lined up around the block, to fucking see,
right.
This film. But looking on it now, through the lens of, almost 75 years or whatever it's been, there are some heavy messages in here.
Yes.
But
this movie that has almost less to do with World War II and more to do with the Cold War, which was just getting underway, and all the H-bomb testing. It was like we didn't learn our lesson, setting off 2 atom bombs on Japan. We just started setting them off in the ocean willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, I think a lot of it was, I disagree a little bit, because I think it was, at least for the Japanese, we see that through the lens of the American mind. I don't know that the Japanese were aiming for that. I think that there was sort of my understanding from the little bit of research that I did was that this was a movie where Godzilla was clearly a metaphor for the hydrogen bomb, the atomic bomb, the nuclear bomb. The nuclear bomb has landed in Japan, and no one can do anything about it. You were just sort of powerless before this thing that made landfall, in 2 major cities.
Right.
And, nobody knew what to do.
But it was larger than that. In that 10 years, nuclear weapons had wiped out the idea of land war, where no one wanted to go to war, with divisions and divisions of soldiers. We were just stockpiling atomic weapons, and the prospect of atomic war was very much real. So I think Godzilla became a symbol for a lot of different things, including out-of-hand technological advances that we weren't really, grasping with
through the lens of people who had actually been hit by one.
Yep.
Not just one, but 2.
Now, what I always understood was that this movie was a direct result of a Japanese fishing vessel coming too close to a nuclear test site, and they had gotten radiation rained on them, and that was really the impetus for it. So it really
yes, it was the castle.
Like it never ends. The Japanese were like, it never ends. Not only did they bomb our homeland, but now they're blowing up the waters. We're trying to fish, and our people are getting still getting bombarded with fallout.
It was the Castle Bravo nuclear tests, where I think one person actually died, but a number of people were infected with radiation sickness, and that's probably the last thing that Japanese people wanted, in the 50s or at any point in the future.
Right.
I mean, you can't. I mean, I've been to Japan a number of times. I love Japan. I love the country. I love the people. I think they're a great people. But I never cease to be fascinated by the extent to which the war and probably the dropping of those 2 bombs forever shifted Japanese society, or at least has currently, almost a century later.
Oh, yeah.
From going to almost 1,000 years of classical warfare mentality and militarism to now, a society that is, they want absolutely nothing to do with
Well,
war.
they were very naughty in the 30s.
Oh,
Gotta
yeah.
say.
Oh,
They
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah,
naughty.
yeah. Yeah, Imperial Japan was fucking. I mean, I love Japan. I love Japanese people. I have a lot of friends over there. But Imperial Japan was another fucking thing entirely. And I think that, sometimes the Nazis, take up all the oxygen in the room.
Sure.
But, the fucking Japanese were the Imperial Japanese were fucking horrific.
Yes.
This was originally supposed to be a love story. I think that the director had in mind, and he wanted to go to Indonesia after the war to have a story about a Japanese soldier and an Indonesian girl who fell in love during the war. But the Indonesians were still so fucking furious about what had happened during their occupation that they refused one of the producers, I think one of the main producers, they refused him a visa to even go there. 10 years later, they're like, no, just absolutely nothing. We want nothing to do with you whatsoever. And I think to this day, Japan is still paying reparations to Indonesia. But on the way back, one of the producers, I think it was a producer, he had the idea for a monster movie.
Right.
Which was based on The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which is a movie that had been set up the year before in America. What were you saying?
It was a British movie, or it took place in London.
Was it a British movie? Okay.
Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's the better move, because they started drawing on, hundreds of years of this folklore tradition from Japan about the kaiju, which is, anything that threatens the mainland, whether it's a typhoon or an enemy from foreign shores or famine or whatever. They just would personify it anthropomorphize it in the body of some type of monster. You can find it in classical Japanese art and folk tales, and they just created one of the greatest kaijus ever for a modern age.
Yeah, this movie from the get-go lets you know that the tone is going to be super dark, super intense. There's no comedic elements in this whatsoever. If there are, I didn't see them, or maybe they're inadvertent.
Nothing slapstick. The one kid's got the potential to be humorous, but the fact that his parents get wiped out kind of kills the potential for him to be funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it starts off with those drums, and that roar, which was just a completely original sound in filmmaking. I mean, now, that's known the world over.
Yeah, this movie's got so much going for it. It's a shame that so many people look at it as just a guy in a rubber suit kicking models, because there are so many really good, effective things that they could do with the limited resources they had. And I think a lot of the money that they had to spend went into some of the better special effects.
This is, I mean, for me, I think they called it suitimation. That was the form of technology that they used, to put the guy in the suit and then, work things to scale with models. Is actually still 54, what is that, 46 and 22, so almost 70 years later, still extremely effective.
Yes.
I didn't find anything really to say, oh God, that just looks awful, even by today's standard. I mean, it still looked very impressive. And I still remember, what Rob Zombie said from that interview, where, something registers in your mind that this is an actual physical, tangible thing.
Right.
I'm not, there's something in my brain when I see this shot where he first pops up over the ridge. Okay, great. Is it as good as the special effects necessarily from the 2014 movie, which we're going to talk about next week? No, but I mean, something in my brain is like, holy shit, that's super intense. I watched this last night. I was, it has great tension. you really don't almost see the monster for the first time. And, in that shot till almost like 40 minutes into it, it's only a 90-minute movie,
Yep.
And, it's just, I mean, you're like, oh, that still grabs you, that still affects you,
Yeah.
that has some impact. And we've talked about a lot of old movies, and I've even seen a few since I've started this show where I've watched it. And I hate to say it, but I remember a little bit of Cheney's The Wolfman, which I talked about in Halloween, and I'm like, for the time, I understand what it is, but this was, it just grabs you, man. Or maybe I've just seen The Wolfman so many times, so many more times than Godzilla.
I think Universal was still going for cheap thrills, where this movie is really trying hard with limited resources to be a good film and not a monster film. It's just a different approach, and it comes out, even though, again, it's not great, but it's still great, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. I hadn't seen this in quite a while. And then, I had bought it when we first started talking about going over the summer to get into these. And I said, well, I can't guarantee on the streaming services holding it because they're very fickle about these sorts of things. So I bought it, and then I just popped it in last night. And this is the first time I had watched the original in a very long time.
Man, I watch it at least once every couple of years.
Very impressive.
It goes back to, I remember being like 3 or 4 and first seeing for the very first time that first movie, and how much it affected me. I fell in love with Godzilla all the way back then, and it really helped that when I was growing up, I was living in outside of Utica, New York, in a town called Rome, and every Friday they had another Godzilla movie for.
Nice.
It seemed like forever, even though it must have been like 6 months, 8 months. And I wound up seeing all of them because I would just be parked in front of the TV every Friday night watching all of them. But this first one was the first one that really grabbed me. And I can keyed in on the scene where he tests the oxygen killer and the fish turn into skeletons. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarazawa, who was later brought back in the 2014, Legendary Pictures franchise by Ken Watanabe, which I'm sure for Watanabe must have been like a very, that must have been an honored role to take, in Japan. When I've been to Japan, there are just Godzilla T-shirts and shit like that, just like everywhere. It's very cool. This starts off with a series of sunken fishing ships, or different ships that are just being sunk off the coast of a very sort of rural fishing town. And they're using some of Kurosawa's actors. The Gramps in the village is the same Gramps who plays the grandpa in Seven Samurai, who gives them the idea to go out and find hungry samurai who will work for food. And he tells them right away, because he knows right away it's Godzilla. He goes right to, and he mentions them, if you mock our traditions. I think he yells at some of the kids, if you, or the younger people, they're like, oh, grandpa, come on, what are you doing? He's like, if you mock our traditions, I think he threatens to send them out there and feed them to it or something like that.
He's like, something. Godzilla shows up and then starts eating people, and he'll get eaten too, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, Japan, in 54, still holding on to their, their sort of sacred legends and traditions, their Jersey Devil, their Loch Ness.
That's the more interesting part of this movie now that I'm older, is that it's such a great snapshot of how the Japanese people see themselves, because this is a movie about themselves, for themselves. It wasn't made for an American audience or a Chinese audience or whatever. This is a film about Japanese people in 1954. And you can see the tension that's built into the writing. You've got the traditionalists on Odo Island, and then you've got the modern people in Yokohama and on the subway and on the cruise ship. It was really interesting to me to just watch the way that they interacted with each other. It's a fantastic document of how Japanese must have viewed themselves in that moment of change.
I think now, looking at Japan, I think clearly the modernists have, sort of won that argument. I don't know if the pendulum will ever swing back to, more traditional, kind of, thinking.
Mhm.
But for right now, yeah, the modernists are, they're having their way, that sort of thing. And, the, I guess the old hardline positions are very much frowned upon and, wanting to be avoided. When I see, my friends post on social media about world events,
Mhm.
it's very much please don't do this. Like we've been down this road before.
Mhm.
You don't want to do these things. We speak from experience.
Speaking of Kurosawa, I thought it was super interesting that when they first encounter Godzilla in the scene that we were just talking about
mm,
on Odo Island, they are showing all the older guys dressed in traditional garb, but they're carrying their samurai swords as
mm.
if they're going to take on this monster with their swords. And
Yeah,
again,
or
that's another,
I think a couple of them had musket rifles.
right, right.
And you're just like, what? They go charging up that hill. They're going to defend
Yeah.
their borders here. And then they see what it is, and they're like, no, we're not. We're running back down the hill again.
Hmm.
But I mean, Grandpa's a hard ass man. He
Yeah.
talks about how in the old days if they were getting a bad crop, they would sacrifice. They would put a girl out on a raft.
Which I thought was weird. Like how recent would they have been sacrificing young girls?
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound, within Grandpa's lifetime.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. It reminded me of Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
Mm.
Where the old man's like, we have a lottery every year, 74 years. This is my 74th lottery. Every year should have a lottery. This kind of thing. And you're just like, maybe that is the old militant attitude versus the young people who just kind of roll their eyes nowadays, or you've got people like Sarazawa who are kind of in the middle, where they make vague references to the war,
Right.
Which I think Sarazawa was a part of. He's a bit more of a, an edgier character.
He said he lost his eye in the war, so he's like that sort of stereotypical sort of grizzled vet who's seen it all and knows the cost.
Yeah, he doesn't smile. He's not lighthearted. He was my favorite character in the movie, actually.
He's the most interesting one.
Yeah, he's the one who sacrifices everything.
Mm-hmm.
He loses everything, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But let's not get into that. I mean, you've got, the nuclear holocaust. I think it said one of the themes was that, man creates the bomb and now nature is sort of taking its revenge.
Yep. That one was big all through. That's like the through line through almost all of the more serious ones. Is that the quote is when mankind falls in conflict with nature, monsters are born, and that's always the through line for Godzilla will come back when we're fucking it up too much.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I mean, the sort of nuclear argument has been sidetracked, in today's society in favor of other conflicts.
Well, Putin's doing his
he's doing his best. He's doing his best. Yeah, you never know. Who knows what the the old Russian folk tales what that's gonna bring forward. Who the hell can tell? And these days, the only things that surprise me are pleasant surprises. These days, that's about where I'm at with this. But I mean, there's a lot of confusion. There's Mr. Taname. The sort of peacenik scientist, and he wants to save Godzilla and to study him. How is he able to survive this kind of radiation? These sorts of things. You've got the pop. Go ahead.
He's the exposition machine. He's the one that every time you need some explaining, put him in front of a microphone and give a press conference, and all of a sudden you have all the information you need.
Yeah. I love how you don't get, how can I put this? For a very long time, you only get glimpses,
right,
of the monster, which I think it's almost like Jaws.
Yeah,
you just getting you're getting that fin, a little small piece here.
Mhm.
But I mean, if you look at these shots, I mean, I took these, off of from a reliable place. I mean, this is the tone and the color,
Yeah.
of the film.
Right.
This is not this is not an action movie. It almost is a horror movie.
Yes. It's like Batman.
Yeah,
Everything's done in the shadows.
yeah, and it's happening at night.
Yep.
And people are screaming,
Mhm.
and Godzilla is killing people.
Yep.
He's just eating them. I mean, it's just it really is like, sort of having the bomb dropped on them again after all this time. The cities are just being leveled by
Yep.
this thing that they are just absolutely defenseless against.
Right. And it went on for an interminably long time. Uh, when he finally attacks the modern city, it just goes on and on. It's not like, oh, there's a couple of scenes, Godzilla's killing us, and oh no, it just goes on and on. It shows you all these buildings, everything going up
Yeah,
in flames, and it really drives home that every attempt to stop him is failing. You've got
right.
the electric grid that they set up to stop him, that goes down. The
He just
tanks,
pushed right
the
through
planes,
that. Yeah. The
all
tanks,
of
the
it.
planes had just bounced, the bullets and the rounds and the
Mhm.
artillery shells just bounced right off. He walks right through that electrified fence. He's just smashing. When that first train runs right into his leg,
Yep.
and then the next thing you know, he's eating the train,
Yep.
and you've got that one woman, and she's holding her children, and she's like, we're gonna be with daddy again soon.
Oh God, that scene was the worst, man.
Oh man. Yeah.
And
I
you imagine
wonder.
like the dad died in the war or something, and you're just like, oh, that is heartrending.
Yeah, and I wonder how many people that are fans of the modern franchise, which is very good. I got nothing against it. I own them all on Blu-ray, but I
Mhm.
wonder how many of them have seen this original film.
Enough. I populate quite a few Godzilla discussion boards online, and
Okay.
there's enough.
Okay, because I mean, I think these are streaming right now on HBO.
Yep, that's where I
They're
watched it last
streaming on
night. HBO
HBO
Max.
Max. Yeah, I've got. I don't have, with the exception of this. This is the only one of the non-modern franchises that I own.
Mm,
Any of the or Shin. I've got Shin.
okay.
I like Shin Godzilla. But I'm sure you could probably find a used copy of a box set out there, either with the greatest hits or
Yeah,
a complete discography.
you got to watch out for that though, because you'll wind up with the Burton version. That's in my box set, like the first box set of DVDs
Oh,
that I
had
bought
Raymond
was
Raymond Burr.
Godzilla, and it's Raymond Burr. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that they made with they renamed it. They called it Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Hmm.
And he's just edited into these scenes. He's like spliced into these scenes for like American audiences,
Yep.
and they
Reporter Steve Martin here in Japan.
yeah, and they've gotten rid of all of the messages that I think actually sort of make this movie great.
Yeah.
The things that cause you to think, because when you watch a Godzilla movie, or when somebody starts talking to you about Godzilla, the average, aside from people that are on the boards, probably doesn't think about, the themes of, the post Second World War, so on and so forth. Especially if you're, if you're a younger person just jumping in from 2014,
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Well, you have to be guided into it. Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, if you were raised on Godzilla versus King Kong, the original,
Yeah.
you're just looking at guys in suits beating each other up.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know.
God, that movie's awful. God, that movie's awful. That was one of my favorite movies for a while, and then I went back to it recently. Oh, it was just maximum carnage, man. Because King Kong is my favorite.
Right.
Like the way that you love Godzilla, I love King Kong. But
Mhm.
King Kong movie, I can't watch like the traditional King Kong story because it just makes me hate everybody. Because it's just so fucking tragic.
Yes.
You know, it's just so fucking tragic, which is why I loved Skull Island, because it had a non-traditional take. You know, he doesn't get shot down by the fucking Air Force.
Right.
You know, whether it's Fay Ray or Jessica Lange or who's in the Naomi Watts.
Yeah.
I think in the Peter Jackson version, it breaks my heart and I've
Every
never wanted to
single one.
hit Jack Black. I never wanted to hit Jack Black until I saw that fucking movie, and I'm like, oh God, okay, I can't watch these anymore.
Yeah, that is the trope. Even in the Mighty Joe Young movies, you're just like, God damn it, this monkey can't catch a break, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's like you fucked with him and brought him over here, and then you're gonna kill him.
Yes.
You know, and then Black's like, it was beauty, and then he just walks away, and I'm like, you fucking douche.
Yes.
You know, you're a fucking douche. You lack of reflective motherfucker. You know.
But that's the whole point of that. Other than being
a sociopath
and special effects, that movie was all about, you know, the American indifference and themes of like slavery and whatnot. You know, it's the same thing. It's a reflection of America in 1933.
Yeah, and it's this absolute lack of introspection, you know, and empathy. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, Raymond Burr gets in there. You know, again, but you know, I think it was the move into the American audiences or the non-Japanese audiences with the King of the Monsters that actually helped launch the franchise.
Yep.
Because they turned it from this, you know, political movie, which is Criterion, like King of the Monsters is not Criterion. It's just a straight up monster movie.
Right.
But that's actually what ended up selling.
Because it sold to kids. Like
Yeah, you can come back in the 50s and, you know, so many of those, you know, post-nuclear, you know, we talked about that with Tarantula and then the giant insects and whatever. But this was,
and all those.
Yeah, this had more of a serious feel to it, even with Raymond Burr spliced in.
Yeah, because you still knew where it was coming from. It was still had themes of nuclear war, of the Cold War. You still remembered World War II, the fact that we dropped the bomb. How can you forget? No one lets you forget that bombs were dropped, either if you're positive about it or negative about it. No one ever forgets. It was still, you know, we still remember Pearl Harbor, for God's sake. So all those themes were still there. They were just sort of downplayed and, you know, polished for an American audience, which would have been 16-year-olds on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. And I mean, even to, well, I mean, you're right. But I mean, even to see these cities and these towns in the aftermath of these attacks, I mean, it's just, they're just flattened. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, holy shit, you know, that's what the cities after the bombs must have looked like. You know, it's just devastation, whether it's the fishing villages, you know, in the very beginning, you know, all the way to the cities, just everything has just been fucking smashed, you know, beyond fucking comprehension. You've got kids that are dying of radiation sickness because Godzilla then unleashes the nuclear breath.
Speaking of radiation, the thing that made me laugh so hard last night, as I was rewatching it, and I never really thought about it, was they're in Godzilla's footprint on Oda Island.
Oh, yeah.
The Geiger counters. And then the kindly old professor picks up the trilobite, and they're like, oh, my God, don't touch that. It's nuclear. It's radiated. Oh, I'm sorry. Puts it in a box, turns around, sticks his hand right into the puddle again. And he's just like, yes, I'm touching more radiation. Hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing at that.
But like I said, I think it's inadvertent humor. You know, they're just, yeah. Now, and you know, I mean, that reminds me of that unfortunate Matthew Broderick Godzilla that we had. And that's just, you know, where they show the footprints. Right. You know, and so the footprints that they're showing in this movie, like the special effect, that was a little limited.
Yeah.
You know, what they did with Broderick's, where they're in the footprint, actually, that was a little on the impressive side. It probably was the only impressive thing about that movie, with the exception of Jean Reno, who just was like for comedic effect.
That's the
I
thing
liked.
about blockbuster movies like that. There's always one scene that's kind of good, and in the midst of all the nonsense, you're just like, it's all right. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I
like
mean,
there
I
was
don't think you could pay me to watch that again, really.
there's so
Um,
little redeeming value, and I tried so damn hard to appreciate it and like it in 1998. I sat there with my popcorn, like I want to like this movie, and I just couldn't.
I
I just
remember,
couldn't.
I remember going to see that, and literally, I was with people who fell asleep.
Yeah.
Like they
What?
literally fell asleep in the middle of the movie, and I think I was the only one who was awake. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm gonna tough it out, because I wasn't tired or anything, but I was just like, this is really fucking bad.
Yeah. I mean,
This
you mean
is,
they fell asleep with velociraptors in Madison Square Garden? That was the most
uh,
exciting thing ever.
oh god, it's just, yeah, it's awful. Um, One of the things that I loved about this movie was the reporter in the tower who just decides he's sticking with it. Fuck it. He's like, this is how I'm going to go. And I'm thinking, what a fucking way to go, man. Like, you're going to die just fucking getting smashed by Godzilla. Like, you're just going to stand there in that tower, and broadcast till the last possible second. And I can't remember if Godzilla grabs him or just not smashes the whole tower down. I think with him in it, and just the whole thing collapses. But that was like one of the coolest deaths that I can remember seeing in a very long time, especially with those types of movies. There are so many different types of deaths, and I want to talk a little bit about.
That's the thing
what
you
this.
notice as you move on. You don't really see death in many of the other movies because they're so geared towards kids. You don't really see death until you get to one of the most heavily messaged Godzillas since the first one, and that is Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, which is all about the environment. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing a lot of death.
Was that the one with the ladies, the Japanese ladies?
Yes.
Aren't there ones? Yeah, but I mean with the organization. Isn't there an organization in the Japanese? And they're in several of the movies, aren't there? They're like twins or something like that.
No, that's all Mothra stuff. I'm talking about anomaly in the first series. That this movie just has everything. You got animation, you got 3 different monsters, you've got toy placements, you've got everything that you would.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the complete package for a Godzilla movie, but it has psychedelic band, a theme, a song. It's just the greatest movie, but it also has you actually start to see death again instead of just models getting smashed. And it's got a really good through line message. So if there is one Godzilla movie after the first one that I would put up there, that's Godzilla versus Smog Monster. I just love that one.
I don't think that is one of the ones that's streaming, of course. I think it's like I think it's Mecha Godzilla, and then I think Son of Godzilla, which by then had gone full on camp.
Oh yeah, that was totally terrible.
Yeah. I mean, they've got, I think it's Godzuki or something like that. And then it became, remember it became a Saturday morning cartoon?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was actually, I watched it. I watched it many, Saturdays. I don't think young people today,
they don't appreciate the fact
how cool Saturday was when we were fucking kids, man. I mean, that was like the whole day for me. And tomorrow, I've got Jay King on here, and Jay King is a Hall of Fame professional wrestling referee.
Oh, nice.
And he's got like over 1,000 matches under his belt. But every Saturday was like Christmas.
Oh yeah, Saturday was 6 a.m. with Bugs Bunny all the way up until I guess Fat Albert, and then Soul Train came on. Yeah. Then you would go out and play baseball for a few hours, but make it back in the afternoon by the time the Godzilla movies came on and wrestling came on. So
it was wrestling, obviously, because that's why I mentioned in Jay. But then there was Creature Double Feature. And then later, as we got older, that transformed in because we had Dr. Shock. You remember Dr. Shock?
Heck yeah.
And then Creature Double Feature on Channel 48. and then on Channel 57. And then that gave way in my teen years, and yours too, I imagine, to Black Belt Theater.
Yeah, yeah.
So
by the
that
time I
was
was in high school, it was all about the Shaolin monks. And
yeah.
there were no more horror movies to be found because the horror movies moved to Saturday night with Saturday Night Dead and Stella.
Elvira, yes, Stella, that's right. Yeah, she was the local Elvira.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, even I was old enough that the Godzilla cartoon was watchable.
Yes.
And it was one of the main ones that you watched. It seemed like every year there was going to be either a new season or one new awesome cartoon that you had to catch that was launching that year. And I remember that was a big deal.
Yeah, there was Godzilla and was Planet of the Apes were the two biggies.
Oh, that's right. That used to be a series.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, that was like midweek, wasn't it? It was like Tuesday night or something like that.
Oh, no. The cartoon was Saturdays. And then there was the live action one that was midweek.
Okay, yeah. For some reason, I'm not remembering the cartoon. Okay, but I'm sure it was there.
On YouTube, my fan.
All right. I'm gonna have to find it. So, in the middle of all this, there are actually some people.
Yes.
And you've got the Ogata character and Emike and Serizawa who have their little love triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And I really fucking hated Emike and Ogata.
Why?
I didn't see why they were necessary. Serizawa was obviously necessary, and they didn't seem necessary except to break Serizawa's heart.
Okay,
that seemed their only. So it almost became like It almost became like a King Kong trope. Like they added, this tragedy where, in another sense, like I almost like what they've done with Serizawa when Watanabe plays it. Without the romance and the girl ditching him, because she ditches him in this arranged marriage because she wants to marry this other guy, and this other guy really doesn't do much, but she loves him and she doesn't want the arranged marriage. But then Serizawa shows her the oxygen destroyer.
Right. And she promises, cross my heart and hope to die, I'm not going to tell anybody.
Yeah, and she hasn't even told him that
she's going to tell everybody.
Yeah, and she hasn't even told him that she's dumped him. Yeah, so she hasn't even told him that she's dumped him. She's already off with some other guy. And of course, I mean, it goes without saying, she's about as reliable as a third tit. I mean, it's just. And so she gives up the secret. And then, what I really liked about one of the other things that was in this, and this will come back to Serizawa, was politics. The bureaucracies.
Yes.
Immediately, the bureaucracies want to cover up everything and keep it a secret from, the general population. They're not portrayed as trustworthy. Like the government is not portrayed as trustworthy. And you've got like everyday citizens, like in these town hall meetings at the very beginning, saying, you're a fucking liar.
Right.
You've got to tell people the truth as to what's going on here. And then that one guy, he just looks at these women and he's like, "Shut up." He just be quiet. Sit down and be quiet. I'm speaking. You don't have the right to, like correct me about anything.
But but there's no question about it. It just is what it is. And that, again, is that picture of Japan in 1954. And then, in a couple of weeks, we get to juxtapose that with the Shin Godzilla, which is a lot more cynical.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to Shin. That's going to be a good one. But I mean, Serizawa, I say all that about the bureaucracy and the government and the untrustworthiness of the government in 54, because Serizawa essentially takes his own life because he realizes one way or the other they're going to get that information out of him.
So the secret's got to die with him, and he's got to keep everything. Say he can't repeat this. He'll kill Godzilla, but he's going to make sure that that they can't get their hands on it.
Right. It's not enough to burn all of his. Say that again.
Which is a smart move, and it's also part of that anti-modernist through line through the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah, because he's a war veteran. He's got one eye, and like you said, he's like the sort of jaded veteran, who's kind of seen everything. He knows what the score is. He knows that even if he burns his research, somehow, some way, through some form of coercion or something, they'll find a way to get that information from him.
Yeah, that this whole movie is very distrustful of the modern Americanized Japan. And the funny scene that I liked was when they were on the subway, and you had the two modern people, and we don't care about Godzilla. It's exactly what the old man said. But the weirdest thing is the next thing you turn around. All right, let me put it this way. There's a giant Tyrannosaurus stomping up and down your coastline. What are you going to do? Hey, let's get on a boat and cruise around Yokohama Bay.
Weren't they going dancing?
What could go wrong?
Yeah, they're going dancing, aren't they?
The subway are on that boat. And you're just like, oh, this guy's just going to clobber these people. And what happens?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and they're out there dancing, and they've got the modern hits going on, and they're spinning each other around, like it's the Dave Clark 5 or something.
They got the American clothes, the American music, all that stuff's going on, and it's sort of like a subtle dig at
the stupidity.
Yeah, remember those guys that dropped those bombs on us? Yeah,
they've become westernized.
Yeah.
So that's an old argument.
Culture.
Yeah, that's an old argument, and you've seen it many times on a lot of different Japanese and places where where the setting is Japan. You could go back to Scorsese's Silence, which is an extraordinarily grim look at how the Japanese resisted Western influences.
Great book too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Even The Last Samurai. Which is I love that movie. I think that's a fantastic movie about the modernity argument versus traditional Japan, but essentially once Commodore Perry forced those gates open, it took about a century, but
the old Clavel novel and miniseries Shogun. Same deal.
Yeah. Dan Carlin, Hardcore History. Has probably a 20 to 24 hour podcast on this. And it's one of his free episodes. He gives it away. Some of them, the old, like the Wrath of the Khans and that sort of shit, you got to pay for. But this one is called Supernova in the East. And it starts from Commodore Perry forcing the gates open all the way to the dropping of the nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I think it's broken into 4 to 6 hour episodes. And it's just, it's amazing to listen to.
Sounds like a deep dive.
Yeah, it is. It's an extraordinarily deep dive. And I won't pretend to tell you that I remember even close to all of it. I mean, that guy is just so fucking intense that, it really is something. But that's an old argument that's portrayed in quite a few Japanese settings.
And imagine we get all that just because of a guy putting on a rubber suit and stomping on some models.
Yeah. That's what I meant when I wondered aloud if modern fans really appreciate how good this fucking movie is, because it really is something, man.
You'll get some, but I hate to say that most people are just, go gaga over the spectacle of 1,000 robots, flying out of the neutral zone,
Yeah.
CGI robots.
Yeah, I hear you. So Serizawa, he loses his love, he loses his science, he loses his life. And he's just such a noble fucking character that he actually wishes them well. Which makes me hate them all the more. And I left this note when I was taking the notes. I said, I hope in the next movie that the first people that Godzilla steps on or Ogata and Emika, and Ogata, the first fucking, I got a message from Serizawa, bam, and he just squishes him right in the fucking, raspberry jam.
But they always come back to haunt you. There's always an Emiko. There's always a Serizawa in every freaking one of those movies. You never run out of them.
I'm glad that they sort of have gotten rid of that trope, and although in the new productions, but I think in today's society they're a little afraid to touch on romantic sort of anything nowadays. You know,
Yeah.
I remember when I had Spider Dabrowski on last week, and his movie actually had like teenage like fucking sex tropes from like an old retro 80s or 90s horror movie. And I'm
I
like,
mean,
fuck.
that's awesome. For a
Yeah, but
throwback.
I told him like, fuck, that's really bold. And he's
Mhm.
like, yeah, man, you know, he goes, it's fucking realistic. You know, he goes, this is what teenagers actually fucking do.
Yeah,
You know, they're
movies are
experimenting and their fucking brain isn't developed. So they're just doing shit, you know, without thinking about anything. And he's like, you know, he goes, you know, that was a Tubi original movie. So I don't know if a larger production house would have, you know, they probably would have edited that right out. But I mean, Tubi was like, yeah. And he's like, I was so lucky. He goes, 95% of everything, or maybe it was everything that he put in, they didn't take out.
Yeah, nowadays movies are obsessed with parents and young teenager dynamics, where the teenagers always know everything and the parents are always just so out of touch.
Yeah, of course.
Because sure.
Right. Why would they know anything? Why would Gramps know anything, right?
Right, exactly.
Now you knew why Grandpa put those women out, put the kids out on the fucking boat. Oh, you don't want to listen to me, motherfucker? Okay, here you go. I got a nice raft for you.
Stranger Things and fed them to the upside down. Yes.
Oh Jesus. So, I mean, how many things did this fucking inspire? I mean, you've got Ultraman, which another thing that we grew, and that was an after school thing. That was like 4 p.m.
Monday through Friday. Johnny Sacco's robot.
Space Giants.
Yes.
Spielberg said that he was heavily influenced for Jurassic Park by Godzilla. Japan has continued to make these.
Oh yeah,
even today.
The second series that came out in the 90s is full of Spielberg references and Spielberg just homages. He's even name dropped in one of them.
Do me a favor. Text me some of those titles. Maybe I can dig them out, or maybe I can find a cheap box set laying around somewhere with some. Because I know they have like 4 or 5 different eras, right?
They have 4 series now.
Okay.
You got the original series, which went from 54 to 75. You get the second series, which was about like 1991 to roughly like 98. And then right before the American version. And then there was the third series that started in 2000 and wrapped up in the mid 2000s. And then now we have the American Monsterverse.
Right. Which, I mean, they're doing another Kong versus God. I worry. And that was another thing that I was a little concerned about when I saw Kong, when I saw King of the Monsters. I'm like, they've used all the fucking monsters.
Yeah, almost.
Like Rodan was a separate introduction. Mothra was a separate introduction.
Rodan was a whole different monster that doesn't really belong with Godzilla, but they folded it in.
Yeah, and so I mean, then they went. I mean, they've done it in 3 movies. They've used all the monsters in 3 movies, and now they've got to bring Kong back. I don't know to fight who.
Yeah, we'll see.
Is it a rematch? Because he lost pretty. I was disappointed, but he lost pretty definitively twice.
It might be, or there might be more to tell with bionic Godzilla.
Another mecha guy, another mecha.
Godzilla,
yeah. We'll see. I'm sure I'll go see it. I'll go. There's so little to look forward to for me in the theaters these days that I'll
unlike
grab
Star Wars, my expectations are always low for Godzilla, so there's nothing but happy accidents when something's really good.
I think these days I'm going with the smaller production houses, and I've decided just to fall back on that and to expand my back catalog because there's tons. I could always be growing that. So yeah, there you go. There's plenty to keep you busy. But I mean, what else? We've had the U.S. franchise now. We've had Pacific Rim.
Yeah,
I love Pacific Rim. That was a fantastic movie.
it was a great idea, and it should have been developed better. That could have spun off in a couple of better movies.
Yeah, they ruined it by the second movie.
Hmm.
They ruined it by the second. That was so bad. That was so fucking bad.
But people don't appreciate. There'd be no Transformers if there wasn't for Godzilla. There'd be no,
It's true.
That half the things that came out of Japan in the 70s that we grew up on would never have happened without Godzilla. I mean, I would even think that movie was in some way an impetus for things like anime, Speed Racer, and everything that came out.
Yeah. I mean, the term kaiju, I mean, is modernized from its origin. Not necessarily. I mean, it's in Japanese folklore, but I mean, in terms of being brought into the mainstream from that movie.
Oh,
yeah. Am I making sense?
Yes, you would never hear anyone say that term until the 90s at least, and then now everyone's saying it.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, and people are making avatars and all kinds of shit. This kaiju, that this, that, and the other. But yeah, I mean Cloverfield.
Oh yeah, totally
Cloverfield. Holy shit! And that may be one of the best. I would put that up there, although it's on a completely different scale.
It's one of the better found footage films that's out there.
Well, I was just going to say it's not a big budget movie like Pacific Rim, but I would put it up there. It's a quality fucking movie, man. Matt Reeves fucking hit it out of the park with that, and that's another one where they just they're the movies that have come along since then just haven't fucking held up. But that's life. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's a good fucking movie. It's streaming right now on HBO Max. I'd advise everybody and their mother to fucking watch it. It's dark. It's dismal. It's scary. It pulls no punches. It's not a kid's movie. That is not. You wouldn't in '54. You would not have taken a kid to see that movie. I don't think.
No, you shouldn't have.
Yeah,
it wasn't marketed towards kids. That's for sure.
It's a serious movie, and as of today, I mean, not just today, but I mean, it is Criterion Collection, so it is considered of the highest quality and one of the greatest monster movies of all time. I'm glad we got a chance to cover this today. So,
let's talk more Godzilla at any time ever.
Well, we've got at least 3 more coming up. Next week, we're doing, I think we've got one a week for the next 3 weeks.
Sweet.
We've got 2014s with Bryan Cranston and Watanabe. And after that, I think we've got Shin. Okay. And then after that, we've got the modern King of the Monsters.
Okay. So
we've got some Godzilla to look forward to, and that should kick off what we've also got coming up soon, which is the Summer of Crime, which I have a lot of plans for. We're going to be shifting away and taking a little break from horror. This is a show that also covers science fiction and action thrillers. And so we've got a good list of crime thrillers that are worthy of discussion, and I can't wait to dig into those. We've got some good interviews coming up with some special guests coming in of a number of different genres to come in and talk. And it's going to be a good summer. So we're almost there at Memorial Day. It's kicking off on Monday. I think that this is as good a place as any to wrap this up for today. Do you think we missed anything?
No, not on this movie. But there's 20 other Godzilla movies I'm ready to talk about at any time. So,
okay, we can whip back to them at any time. My thanks to Godzilla versus what have you. We will be back tomorrow for something a little different. We have an interview here tomorrow with Mr. Jay King. And Jay is a person that I actually met in Japan. And he is a Hall of Fame professional wrestling referee with over 1,000 matches under his belt. And I, at the same time, probably that I discovered horror movies, discovered professional wrestling. And so professional wrestling has been a lifelong love of mine as I get a little older, I've fallen away from it for a bit, but I have decades and decades worth of memories. Just, from Saturdays, and then even making it to some live matches, pay-per-views, all different sorts of things. So I can't wait to have him on here tomorrow to talk him up and pick his brain from some experiences. And that's definitely going to be a good time. My thanks once again to God Bill, and we'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Everybody, all the best. Take care.
All right.